What is up, plant people? It's time once more for the Planthropology Podcast, the show where we dive into the lives, careers, and general very coolness of some very cool plant people. I'm Vikram Baliga, your host and your humble guide in this journey through the plant sciences. And as always, y'all, I'm so happy to be with you today. Hey, so life's crazy. It is. We're getting into summer of 2022. Who knows when you're listening to this? But as this semester wraps up, my brain has been a big pile of very gross mush. And also I've had some family stuff going on. I've got a family member going through a medical procedure and my brain's been all over the place. I'm headed out of town for a little while, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Personal stuff doesn't matter. So I thought what I would do today and maybe a few times through the summer as I maybe take a little bit of a break. I don't know what that's like. I may try to do that. I'm going to replay some of my favorite episodes from the past. So I don't want to belabor this too much. There's an intro in the episode that you'll hear, but this is an episode that has meant a lot to me. I've actually listened back to it a couple of times. So my guest, Dr. Becky Bowling, who may just be going by Dr. Becky Bowling by this point, is one of my very best friends. We went to grad school together. We've known each other for more than a decade, and she's just one of my very favorite people in the universe. So way back in episode 20, she agreed to talk to me about her job, and I think her job has changed a little bit since then. But this is still such a great episode about, just how do we communicate science? How do we balance work in our lives? How do we connect everything around us? So I'm just going to get into it here in just a second because I want you to hear it again. But a few things first. Thanks so much to our sponsors, the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science and Forest Proud. Forest Proud is a nonprofit organization focused on forest-based climate solutions. Yes, my friends, trees can save the world. Head over to forestproud.org to find out more information about what they do and what they're all about. And if you use the promo code Planthropology at checkout, and their shop, they've got some cool swag, you'll get 10% off your order. Connect with Planthropology all the places, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on TikTok as @theplantprof. We have a cool Facebook group called Planthropology's Cool Plant People. You can find my Redbubble store on the website, planthropologypod.com. You can email me at planthropologypod@gmail.com. And you can support the show monetarily if you would like at buymeacoffee.com/planthropology. You want to buy me a cup of coffee and get yourself some stickers. Anyway, yeah, here's Dr. Becky, one of my very favorite humans. Oh, I almost forgot. As I record this, Becky's birthday was this week. So in your own brains and in your own homes and cars, go ahead and sing happy birthday to Dr. Becky. So we're shooting for like 30 to 40 minutes. But
couple of hours. Gotcha.
Yeah, it can go as long as it needs to.
The next 3 episodes will actually be Becky.
Welcome to the Beckyology, all Becky all the time. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, we are live once more, and I'm here with Dr. Becky Bowling. Are you going with all of it? Are you using all the words?
I like to keep it changed up all the time so no one ever knows what to call me, and it gives them extra anxiety and makes me really hard to find. No, I'm just kidding. I am transitioning to just using bowling, but it is a transition because, when you're a professional, a lot of people, you have work published with a certain name and they become familiar with a certain name. And so, I kind of like hyphenated for a while and now I'm gradually moving just to Becky Bowling. So,
all right. So Dr. Becky, we're going with that.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Becky is one of my best friends. We did our master's, or I guess I was doing my master's when she was finishing her undergrad and then starting your master's. It's been like 10 years. I have no idea. And so Becky is with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension or like Water University or AgriLife Research or the CIA or Texas Rangers. I don't know. Becky's changed jobs a couple times recently.
Yeah, it's a little complicated. I have a new position So for the past 2 years, I served as one of our statewide extension turfgrass specialists. And so some people may know me from that role. I had a counterpart in that position who is Dr. Chrissy Seegers, who's another one of my very good friends. And then I accepted a new position where I am now an assistant professor and extension specialist for urban water. And with that position, I have multiple affiliations. And so I am part of the Department of Soil and Crop Sciences with Texas A&M, which is the department that I've been in for the last couple of years. I also am supported and funded by the Texas Water Resource Institute, or the TWRI. I work very closely with Water University, and I also kind of have this role to provide outreach and conduct research on water conservation in urban landscapes for the state of Texas, and to collaborate with as many other agri-life entities as possible to that end. So a lot of affiliations. It's a very new position, and it'll be kind of interesting to see where it goes. And I'm excited about that. But it is a weird time to start a new position too. So
yeah, so you're not busy or anything, right? Like
no.
1,000 things.
Not at all. Nothing but free time.
Yeah. So how long have you may have said this? How long have you been in that position?
In this new position, I've only been in it. I started March 16th. So literally like right as everything. I have not been into a new office yet at all.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like if you'd actually gotten okay. Okay. So, what we normally do is, I guess, talk a little bit about everyone's backstory. And so I would just like to hear what got you into what you do? Why do you care about studying plants and water and long job titles and all of those things?
Oh man. So you told me ahead of time that we're doing 30 minutes, but I just don't know. I feel like this story alone might be a couple of episodes worth of material.
We can as long as you need to.
So I grew up in the DFW area, and I started at Texas Tech in 2007, which is where I ultimately met you later on, and several of other people that you have already interviewed, including Kyle and Daniel and Kaylee and Amber. And so I started off as an interior design major.
Oh.
And then I transitioned to a human development and family studies major. And I did that for a year. And as a part of a kind of a requirement for that position, we had to take a science class. And I decided to take horticulture because I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting and different. And so I took horticulture with Ellen Peffley, Dr. Ellen Peffley, when she was there. And I just kind of immediately fell in love with it. It felt very natural for me. And I liked the aspect of this kind of blend of, more traditional study mixed with hands-on and being able to be outside and connect with nature. And it just kind of took off from there. So I changed my major again to horticulture and stuck with that. So now I then went on to work as an hourly worker for Dr. Cynthia McKinney. And that's where I met all of you guys who have been some of my longest friendships in my adult life. And, I just have I've had a very long journey. And I guess kind of the neat thing about where I am now is that I feel like I've kind of come full circle. Mm-hmm. I've been on this very long path through graduate school, and I lived in Georgia for a while, and I was involved in turf for a while, and I've dappled in a variety of different areas of agriculture and horticulture. And now I've come kind of all the way back to where I sort of started back in Texas. And even working with Daniel, again, it's kind of brought it all back together because I worked with Daniel at Tech years ago. So
yeah, and that's really cool. And this whole podcast is just a thinly veiled excuse for me to hang out with my friends from grad school and talk to people that I studied with. But it's been quite the journey, huh? And something we talk about a lot on the show with a lot of the guests is that life is never a straight line, right? And our careers and the things we do are never a straight line. And so, when I ask that question of how'd you get into plants? How'd you get into all these things? it's interesting just hearing what motivates and gets people into it. So, as far as what you do now, we've talked quite a bit about water conservation, but what's your approach to that? So, like when you talk about water, I mean, again, how much time do we have, right? Like,
just don't water ever. No, I'm just kidding.
Just turn off the water, and that's it. Period.
Yeah. So I think that's a good question, and I think so I guess one thing that maybe I failed to say in the answer to your previous question is there's kind of two big things that have kept me engaged in this world for the last 10, 12 years. And one of those is the relationships that I have with people that I've met. And there's definitely a bonding amongst, I want to say plant people, but I think it extends beyond that. Certainly I have bonds with what I would describe as more soils people, but there are bonds that you can form in this world where you share this passion for nature and the environment and feeling like you can have an impact on that, however big or small. And so that's a big thing. And then, for me, I feel like I've really come through a lot of my experiences with this appreciation for how everything is connected. I think that is true for human relationships in this world. It's a surprisingly small world, our little world of agriculture and horticulture.
For sure.
But it's also true for nature. And I think like I've gotten an increasing appreciation for the importance of integrated management. And a lot of times we think about that with respect to pest management, but I think that the same principles apply to resource management in general, including water conservation. And I think what I've realized in my experiences is that I love every aspect of management. And that's why I've kind of chosen to explore different avenues. So I find soils and soil management fascinating. I think that when it comes to water conservation, and one of the goals of my new position for me is how can I work with so many great people, and we have a lot within the state. We have a lot in AgriLife. We have a lot at Texas Tech and other universities. How can I work with people that are already doing their part toward water conservation to then take that to the next level and have this very integrated approach where we consider things like plant selection, site preparation, soil management, irrigation practices, and all of that comes together in this really effective program to improve how water resources are used. And for me, there's a big social science component that comes with all of that too, that I find really intriguing and that I'm really interested in kind of building on in my new position. So how do we better understand like what people prioritize when it comes to their landscapes, and how do we use that to, as researchers and outreach people, to like connect more with parts of the population that maybe we haven't connected with very well before, and really have this like far-reaching change and impact on the environment. So that's a very long answer to your question.
No, it's a great answer, and something you said in there really kind of stuck in my brain a little bit, and I think that something that you do very well, and that I'm glad that you're pursuing, is collaboration. Because in the sciences, sometimes we maybe don't play super nice with others. That surprise to any of you out there who are maybe uninitiated, but sometimes we kind of like circle the wagons and stay in our lane, and it's just like, I'm going to do my research and I'm not going to talk to anyone. And I'm just going to do but today's world is not like that. Right? We don't live in this isolated scientific, some people do. We should not live in this little isolated bubble in academia. And I love that you talk about like all of us working together, because there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle of conservation and conservation in general. Water, I guess, is the specific thing that you and I both probably work in more than anything else. But just when we talk about ecology and conservation and everything up to climate change, like we have to figure out how to work together.
Yeah.
So I guess a follow-up question to that is, you kind of, if and correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of serve two roles as, a research scientist on one hand, where you're conducting research, adding to the literature, all that, but then you also do lots of public outreach and lots of extension style programming, and how do you balance those things in your life? And I asked
I
that.
don't. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, no, right.
I do both 100%. No, I mean, I think that's like the challenge of anybody in these types of roles, or anybody anything in life. There's always, it's like a never ending challenge as an adult of how do I balance everything. And I think for me, first of all, I like public speaking, and I like engaging with the public, and I like meeting new people. And so that part comes somewhat naturally to me. And I also think that it's really important that we have an effective way of communicating research. Like, I think one thing that also happens sometimes in science or academia in our bubbles is that we, work really hard on something. Maybe we even generate, peer-reviewed journal articles from that work. But how do we then take that and get it out there on a bigger scale? That's where extension comes in, and that's part of the role that they play, or that we play. And I kind of like being being in the middle of those two things. Like, when I do research, it tends to be more applied, because a lot of times I'm thinking about how do I answer a question that I might get from the public.
Sure, yeah.
But there's also like tremendous value in the work that more theoretical researchers do. And I think it's kind of a neat challenge to think about how can I take the work that they do and communicate that to people so that there's this like large scale impact of that work, And so I don't know if that really answers your question. It's hard to balance, but I love the outreach part of my job. And, it's also important to me in that role to stay engaged in research, so that when I am providing outreach, I know that it's the most up to date, and it's going to be of value to the people that I'm sharing that with. Right.
Sure. So. Yeah. No, and I think you did answer my question, and I think that last part you said that, the benefit, I think, to also generating research while you're doing communication is that, again, that it's new, right? You know what you've done, and you know what the results look like. And it's not just that, one paper leads to scientific fact, but it keeps you in the literature, and it keeps you in, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to say it. I guess it kind of keeps your thumb on what the consensus currently is in a certain field, right? Whether that's turf or conservation or whatever. So,
it keeps us always moving forward.
Yeah, there you go. That's a way better way to say all the words I just threw out there. Great.
That's going to be my slogan from this episode. Keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. I'll make a sticker. We're going to have stickers. So that's, this is an aside for those of you out there listening, but I am still planning on making stickers from each episode that you can get and stick to things in your home or your children or whatever. I don't know where people put stickers.
An image of somebody's child just like covered in stickers,
in plant ecology stickers. Yeah. That could be my child. He's going to be a billboard for Halloween. It'd be great. So, okay, I had a question and it's gone. So speaking of research, and I know that it can be tough as you're working on specific things to really throw out a lot of information about it for a variety of reasons. But do you have anything you're working on right now that you'd be comfortable sharing that you're like particularly excited about, or projects coming down the pike?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a weird spot right now because I'm transitioning between positions. And so I'm involved in 2 USDA SCRI, or Specialty Crops Research Initiative grant projects. So they're like large multi-institutional federal grants that are both related to the world of turfgrass science. And one of those is exploring herbicide resistance that we see in a weed called annual bluegrass, or Poa annua. This is a very I am always a little impressed with this weed. We find it on every continent. You know, it actually was introduced to the maritime regions of Antarctica and has started moving into the tundra regions. It's extremely adaptive. And so there's been some significant economic impacts of this weed developing resistance in high value turfgrass systems. And so I'm part of a really big grant right now exploring that. And Texas A&M is actually the lead on the grant. And it's been a really neat opportunity because I'm not a weed scientist by training. But I loved taking weed science when I was at Texas Tech, actually. Shout out to Pete Dautre out there. If you happen to be listening, your classes were among my favorites. And so, you know,
they work in class. We took the class. His kids might. But Jesse, if you're listening, tell your dad that we liked his classes.
But it's, you know, so that's kind of cool. And I get to work with a lot of, I would describe them as like the best minds in turfgrass weed science in the country, including people like Jim Brosnan and Sean Askew and Aaron Patton. And so that's kind of been really neat to be a part of that. And then the other grant that I'm on is kind of more related to water conservation. And it's an SCRI, a USDA SCRI initiative that is all about developing new turfgrass cultivars that are more drought tolerant and evaluating them for use in urban landscapes. And there's a big extension and social outreach component to that I get to be a part of, where we look at, you know, great, we've got these excellent new drought-tolerant turf grasses. How do we then effectively communicate to people that plant them in their yards, you know, how to manage them differently? Because I think, you know, one of the challenges that we may see sometimes is we put a lot of time. It takes like 15 to 20 years to develop a new turf grass, for example. Okay. Yeah. So that's a long process, and a lot of work goes into that. And if the objective is to produce something more drought tolerant, and it goes into a landscape and is managed like every other grass before it, you know, then we're not getting the true benefit of that improved cultivar. And so that's something that I get to be a part of as well. And a lot of our major warm season turfgrass breeders throughout the country are involved in that, and including the one that we have at Texas A&M, who is Ambika Chandra. And pretty much a lot of our the turfgrass team at Texas A&M is involved in that in some capacity. So that's also a pretty neat research project. So those are some things that I'll continue to stay somewhat involved in as I transition into my new role. And then, you know, going forward, there's kind of two big areas that interest me from a research standpoint. One of those is how to optimize infiltration in urban landscapes. Okay. I think that there's already a lot of research looking at irrigation practices and irrigation programming, which is great. And I would love to complement that with more thorough research looking at how site preparation and soil management affect water catchment and permeability of soils. And, you know, I think one thing we think about a lot in Texas, we're always focused on the drought side of things, but also here in Texas, we have parts of the state that experience very severe intermittent flooding in their urban areas. And both of those problems are things that can be addressed by improving infiltration rates to help capture more rainwater when we get it. Sure. Infiltration also plays a significant role in, you know, preventing nutrient pollution, pesticide pollution, runoff. And so it's a pretty important component, and that's something I'm really interested in, and collaborating with some of our soil scientists to look at that more closely. I think there's some interesting barriers that come with construction and new building. that significantly affect infiltration in urban landscapes. And if you've got a brand new yard, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about out there. So that's something I'm interested in. And then the other thing is social science research. And that's where working with Water University is going to be a really great opportunity, because they have done a phenomenal job of establishing themselves as kind of a premier outreach group for delivering research-based information. And I think they are going to be a great place to kind of launch this really effective look at communication and how to connect with audiences in different ways, because that's something that they've already been exploring to make their program be successful. And so kind of turning that into data that we can then analyze in a more scientific way. So those are some things that I'm interested in.
Well, those are great areas of focus. And so, like, just real quick, for the folks out there that are maybe not water and soil people, infiltration is not like working your way into clandestine organization. Well, it is that, but it's also the rate at which water moves into the soil. Correct? Is that a simple way to put that?
Yeah. And how effectively that happens, right? And so, like, I mentioned construction. If we think about how sometimes maybe new lawns are constructed, a lot of times the soil is significantly disturbed. Some of the good stuff may be just kind of shaved right off the top there.
Gone.
We may sprinkle in some trash. I don't know, a bag of Quick-Crete or some Doritos bags, and then compact it heavily with some really heavy equipment. And, ultimately we get something that may be akin to concrete, especially with some of our clay soils here in Texas, which are already really fun to play with.
So fun.
And so then, as soon as we get rainfall, it may not go in at all. It may just run right off the surface and into the street. And so I would love to look more deeply into how do we change that a little bit. And we have some great soil scientists that I think are going to make excellent collaborators to help us with that. So.
That's awesome. And so soils aren't something we've talked a lot about on the show, but it's coming up this fall probably. But
it's a dirty subject,
and this is a safe for work show, so we probably need to stay away from the soils. See, that's going to be a great sticker. Soils are dirty. Anyway, so, but no, that is really important. I think that something that people don't talk about enough is how important, and it's weird because it should be common sense, but how important just the quality of the soil is to the overall plant system and our overall conservation and just ecological efforts and things like that. So it's kind of
Texas is a great place to explore that because, we have 12 soil orders or kind of larger classifications for soils in the world, and 9 of those are here in Texas. Wow. So we have a lot of soil diversity, and it creates a really neat environment to look at different approaches to soil management and how that affects the health of Texas landscapes in different ecoregions. So I think it could be really fun. Somebody listening to this might be like, that doesn't sound fun to me, but I think it sounds pretty fun.
I think it's fun. Well, and so for our international and other folks that are listening, Texas is pretty big. If you've never been here or seen it, it's like the size of Western Europe. So there is a lot of diversity in ecosystems and different things. So it is a good place to study everything from, the effects of freeze damage on lawns and different plants to what do you do if you are literally trying to plant things in silly putty and all of that.
It shrinks and swells. It shrinks and swells too.
Yeah, shrinks and swells, all kinds of stuff. Giant cracks and swell. The other thing I wanted to mention is I'm really interested in what you were talking about in the social science aspect of horticulture.
Well, maybe we can collaborate on something.
Well, if I ever finish writing my freaking dissertation, which 2 of my chapters are on that, then yes, I would love to. So this is coming out June 16th, and hopefully at this point, intrepid listeners, I have finished writing and am well on my way to having a really great, wonderful dissertation to turn in. But about social sciences and water and stuff. So anyway,
and we'll call you Dr. Bowling. It'll be so exciting.
I'm gonna make everyone call. I'm not. I'm so much not that guy. I have a couple of people in mind who I might call me Dr. Bowling just to be that, be a jerk. But Yeah, no, that's not going to be a thing. I don't think. Maybe Dr. Plant Nerd. I can live with
Dr. Plant Nerd.
I'm gonna make business cards that say for the podcast to say Dr. Plant Nerd. But tangent aside, like social sciences is so important in conservation, and I think that's fascinating. So part of what I'm studying, or what I studied, was in my part of the state, what makes people want to save water? Is it being fined? Is it just the price of water? Is it, people trying to communicate in different ways? And that's something that going forward in my own research that I really want to dive into, because I think that we can do all the biological science we want. We can make the best product and come up with the best management practices for soil and turf and all these other things. But if we can't figure out how to get people to actually do those things, it's all for naught, right? So I think that is somewhere that, as maybe an industry, we should be putting an academic industry and a industry be putting more and more time into the social aspect of it.
Well, and I think what we're going to discover, or what we are discovering, is there's not a one size fits all answer for that. And for us to be really effective, we have to identify as many of those, I think of them as kind of priorities for people, or behavioral drivers, right? And we have to speak to each of those a little differently, right? So some people may really value environmental stewardship, and other people may go, yeah, that's great. I have a family and a full-time job, and my priority is doing whatever is the most convenient, right?
Yeah.
And then the answer is well, then how do we make water conservation as convenient as possible for that audience? Or how do we make it more cost effective for an audience that values budget? Or so there's a lot of different, channels. And I think that's one of our challenges as people that interface with the public, is how do we change our approach a little bit depending on the audience, or to appeal to different audiences. And I think of it as kind of similar to, if you're a really effective teacher, you recognize that people have different learning styles, and you try to accommodate that in your approach. And I think it's similar for us, that not everybody wants to sit down for an hour and listen to data about,
that could be true.
Yeah. So, and I also think there's a lot of, we live in a world where there's a lot of different ways to talk to people. Podcast is one.
Yeah.
Written publication, social media. How do we tap into all of those and use that as a way to connect with people in different ways? So I think that'll be really fun to explore going forward, for sure.
Well, and that you kind of answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyway to see if you have further insights. So in today's world, as we go forward, I like to ask the question of, where do you think we're headed as an industry, right? And we kind of just talked about that, but we have, in the past, 2 months, had to figure out all kinds of new ways to deliver information, right? And then we talk a lot about, okay, well, when this goes back to normal, or things are normal again, blah, blah. I don't know that things are going to be quote unquote normal like they were 2 years ago, or like they were 3 months ago. I think that there's some things in our educational process that may have fundamentally changed. Mm-hmm. So you've had to do a lot of, you do lots of programming. You do a lot more programming than I've ever done, with extension or otherwise. So what have you found? And this is, maybe a pretty broad question, but are there specific things that you have found over the past couple months that work well for delivering, this kind of information, and maybe some things that don't?
Yeah. So, again, I really think it depends on the audience, so I have done with Water U, we've done some really great virtual classes that are, about an hour to an hour and a half a piece. And they're kind of more in depth on these larger topics. And I think we have a subset of the population that just loves that. They love to sit down and kind of completely immerse themselves in a subject and digest as much as possible. But I also think you have an audience that's where's the quickest, most efficient place that I can get this information? And can we do it in a way that's funny or interesting, or where I leave with one point that I then take and implement into my daily life? And so I think like, one thing that we have to figure out how to do as outreach individuals is like, how do we continue to do this more conventional approach of these like longer programs, very rich programs, but also like kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Here's another place for your thinking music. But also have, these like very quick, easy to digest pieces of information for people that this is just something that they just kind of think is interesting. They want to get something quick from it. And I think like, those of you that follow Daniel Cunningham, I know he was on this podcast before. He does a good job of generating some things like this. We have some people in AgriLife that do a nice job with these, like, here's a snippet, here's a meme or whatever it is. And so I think that'll be really important, like diversifying the platforms that we use for communicating, diversifying how we deliver messages, and like the duration of those messages, and really trying to identify as scientists, like what are the main things I need people to know, and how can I create a message that's consistent in terms of the content, but appeals to a very broad range of people. And so I think, that's where the industry has to move. And I also think like here in a state like Texas, we have a big trend that we're becoming increasingly urban.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We have more and more people that maybe are interested in gardening as a hobby, but they have to balance that with a very different lifestyle. And so how do we keep up with that as well? And appeal to that increasingly urban audience. And I think increasingly younger audience. We have younger people that I think are very interested in edible plants and having some gardens at home. So, that's kind of where I see things going, I guess.
Well, no, and you're right. And for those of you interested in using memes for science, go back and listen to episode 18, which was really pretty much all about memes. We talked about memes for an hour. It was great. And TikTok a little bit, but whatever.
Yes. That's actually what I should have said when you said, what's the future? I should have said TikTok.
It's TikTok. I'm so old. Like for the longest time, I hung in there with I don't understand TikTok. Yeah. I wanted it to be Vine and it's not. But
where are our trending plant dances? That's what we really need.
Trending plant dances.
Yeah, they need to be interpretive so that as people do the dances, they understand new scientific concepts.
Okay, plant people, that is a challenge for you. If you if you have a TikTok channel and you want to tag, I don't know, plant dances, hashtag plant, I don't know, come up with something and send it to me. That I would love to share your interpretive plant dance. And it can't just be Dancing Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I mean, you can have a little bit of Groot.
I'm not opposed to Groot.
Yeah.
But it can't just be Groot.
Not just Groot.
No, you got to come up with something new. But trending plant dances, I like that a lot, actually. But no, I think you're totally right in that the way we approach our audience is going to have to evolve. And also, it's interesting there's a group I think called the Garden Research Institute that does this big national gardening survey every year. And the last one I've seen was from 2018, but they showed this huge increase in landscape and garden and vegetable and all these other things, like those kinds of activities in people 34 and younger, in the 18 to 34 age range. And so, I've said this for a long time since I was with Extension, but the public of that, or the power of that kind of outreach, Extension, and that model is you take information to where the people are. Right. And so if they're on TikTok, that's where you go. If they're on a meme page on Facebook, that's where you go. And so it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how, in light of this whole COVID thing and just a changing, I guess, social climate where education goes over the next 5 or 10 years. I'm kind of excited about it because I think we have dug ourselves into a few ruts that we've struggled to get out of as a academic institution in general. And it'll be interesting to see how we come out the other side of this. So I've kind of lost track of time, so it's fine. Yeah, whatever. People are still listening. Like,
we refer to this as a deluxe episode. You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah. You're so welcome. My 5 listeners are very happy right now. They're like, extra content. So starting to wrap up a little bit, one thing I always ask for is a piece of advice, and that can be like conservation related or school related or whatever else. But if there's like one thing you wanted, just like you said, we need to be, I guess, focusing on take home, like driving home some of these points. If there's one thing that you think our listeners should know and carry away with them, what do you think that would be?
Everything is connected.
Okay.
And I know that that's not really advice, but but the advice would be, use that concept to inform everything that you do. With respect to people and with respect to the way that you manage your landscape. If you remind yourself regularly that you're connected to something bigger, I think it leads to more present decision making that ultimately is more beneficial to everybody. And so that's probably what I would say. And if you're interested in this kind of subject as a whole, there's a book I can recommend called Lawn People.
Okay.
And it is kind of all about the way that we think about landscapes. And one of the things that they touch on in the book is they kind of talk about how even the most environmentally minded people a lot of times think of their landscape as kind of being like an island or a bubble, and the decisions that they make in that bubble don't have any larger implications. And what I can tell you is that everything that we see in the research is that increasingly, because so much of our country is urbanized now, the way people manage their lawns and their landscapes can have huge, far-reaching impacts on the environment. And so, and I'm not saying that to guilt anybody, but what I'm saying it for is to remind people that, like, you as a person with just your little lawn have a lot of power to have a positive impact with your little piece of Texas. And so as you go out into your day and into your life, everything is connected.
I love it. No, that's great. That's really great. Yeah. No, it is, because it is easy to compartmentalize ourselves too much and, think that the things that I do don't matter too much, but they do. Mm-hmm. The decisions we all make in our landscaping and in our lives in general do matter.
And I would feel pretty confident saying we just changed a lot of lives with this podcast.
Did. So again, listeners, you're welcome for all 6 of you. We gained one for the extra bonus content. So Becky, I you know how much I enjoy talking to you. I hope you know how much I enjoy talking to you. But
I wish the feeling was mutual, but it's just
I get that a lot. So where can we find you? Plug your stuff.
Okay, so I am on Twitter at TXWaterWoman now, and I'm also very involved in the AgriLife Water University Facebook page. If you do not follow them, I strongly recommend that you do. You can find a lot of my stuff there. And just keep an eye out, because I have a feeling that here in the next couple of months, I will be surfacing with some new social media accounts for my new position. And so, then you'll be able to follow me in even more places. So,
yeah. Follow Becky, Dr. Becky, all the places, and I'll link all that in the show notes. And as new stuff comes up, I will share it. But Becky, thanks for being on with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I think what you're doing is awesome. And I was kidding, obviously. I love talking to you. So I'm excited just to clarify for anybody listening that doesn't know me and know that I'm super sarcastic sometimes. So thank you, and great job, and keep it up.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your June, and we will see you at the beginning of July with another episode that someone will be on. I'm not sure who yet, but someone will be on it. Take care, and we'll talk to you later. Actually, at this point, I do know who the next episode will be, but I'm going to let it be a surprise. So I'll just say that if you're a tree you should be very excited about this episode. And if you are not a tree and actually an organism that has ears and can listen to a podcast, you should be even more excited. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that everything's connected, and everything that you do matters to someone and to something, because we're all connected, and everything else in this ecosystem and this crazy world is also connected. Thanks so much to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for all their support. This could not be done without them. It's just the best place that I've ever worked, and it's really wonderful. If you want to find us, look us up on the interwebs. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Search for Planthropology. Look for the greenish background with the whitish tree and the word Planthropology on it. You can also find us at planthropologypod.com. You can email me at planthropologypod@gmail.com. Go join the Face Space group. Planthropology's Cool Plant People. There's also one for Jolly Green Scientists and Talking Bugs. But y'all, again, you make this a pleasure to do. You are totally rad. And I love you lots. Talk to you next time.